Good morning, everyone. My apologies for the switch in the order, but I need to leave at 11 for a quarter of an hour, so the scheduled previous speaker was kind enough to switch with me. So I'm Luís Correia. I'm with IST and INESC, the Technical University of Lisbon. And I bring here some of the work that it has been done at the European level on smart cities. I'm part of the steering board of the networks platform, and I coordinated there the work on applications. There was a working group devoted on applications and targeting smart cities. So I bring here some of the conclusions of this working group. So basically, I will present you the concept. Of course, I'm sure that yesterday, unfortunately, I couldn't be here, but you heard a lot about the concept for smart cities. So I won't bore you too much about these. Still looking at the opportunities and challenges, not only from the technological viewpoint, but trying to bridge a little bit with the previous speaker and talking about value, or why it needs to be there anyway. But then talking also about applications, requirements, and so definitely talking about the technology. And the bridging we definitely need also to do with the other sectors. And this is, I think, one of the key aspects of the smart cities. So the smart cities are basically having probably too many definitions, but everyone agrees that a smart city is basically bringing ICT to work with many other sectors we have, and I'll be identifying them in a minute. Basically, this means that we need to put together a lot of things in a smart city, and this is, again, is not only technology. We need to bring the economy, so this has a direct impact on the competitiveness of the businesses, of the companies. We need to deal with people, and of course, social and human capital in a general way, because we live in cities. A lot of us live in cities, you'll see in a minute. The governance, so this means that the local authorities, but also at the regional level and even at the national level. Mobility, and mobility here has the two ways of looking at it, meaning mobility of people and goods, and then we are talking about transportation, but also mobility of information, and then we are talking about ICT in general. Then we have the environment, natural resources, energy, all the things that we also have to deal in a city, and then the ultimate goal of everything of these, which is ourselves. So living the quality of life of all the citizens that are in a city. If we look from the more technological viewpoint and the application areas in here, then definitely we can look at, again, many aspects that need to be brought together in a smart city. Public information and training, and this goes much beyond the, let's call it the smart stops of the bus, how many minutes needs the bus to be arriving, something like that. Emergency warnings, this is something that the technology is basically already there, and there's a lot to be done here. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but I remember reading that when there was this catastrophe in Japan, the tsunami, that one of the problems they had was to communicate to people that the wave was coming. There was no expedite way of sending an SMS to everyone, just run away, whatever. You know? So, and for those of you that saw the news in Central Europe with all the floods 2 weeks ago, so there is really a need for the things, and in some of the cases there are no major technological barriers. Health inclusion and assisted living. So health, of course, is health with everything that has to do with these. Inclusion means all the people that have a deficiency or they are impaired or all these kind of things. And of course, they need to be taken care of as well and create the conditions for them. And many times the solutions are just there. It's just really reaching these people and the technologies that make their life easier. And assisted living. Everyone is getting older. I don't think anyone is not in this club. So this is also in Europe is becoming a big thing, and we need to take into consideration as well. ITS, intelligent transportation systems, with various perspectives, which I'll show in a minute, And then environment, energy, efficiency, smart grids. You heard most probably about all of this stuff yesterday. So these are definitely the areas that should be brought into a smart city. So the vision that we came for the smart city is basically two things. One, increasing the citizens' quality of life. So again, this is the key issue, putting people under the focus. And of course, in order to do these, or as a means to do these, improving the efficiency and the quality of the services provided by both government entities and businesses. So we need to put the two sectors together, working together, talking together in order to achieve these. Basically, the major challenge is about integrating infrastructures. This is really one of the key challenges we have in smart cities. And this is not an easy task, as you will see in a minute. One of the problems we have is there are too many players. And this is, on the one hand, is a challenge. On the other hand, constitutes quite some barriers. If you look, for example, for the health sector or the transportation one, each city, each hospital has its own system. There is no standardization whatsoever. Each entity has its own IT system, which connects to nothing or connects to the internet in general. So putting all these things working together, let's call it a nightmare in between commas. If you come from the telecommunications sector, in which we are used to a lot of standards coming from 3GPP or where they come from, and it's just looking at the standard and then implementing it, it works. So we are here in a total different paradigm as far as this is concerned. Then, of course, it has to do with citizens. It has to do with reaching people on their daily life. So definitely we need to incorporate the social and the political dimensions here. And this is a key issue, because I can, in 1 second, tell you a story what happened around 2 years ago in Portugal, which was, there was the intention of putting a chip in the license plates of the cars to control the entrance of cars into Lisbon. So no, people couldn't care less, I mean, the guys in charge couldn't care less about if Luís Correia was getting in or out of Lisbon. They wanted to know how many cars were getting in and out. And the thing didn't go through because suddenly someone in the media discovered the problem of privacy, and Big Brother is watching you and all these things. On the other hand, we are giving our data to Google Maps, and you go to Google Maps with traffic, and you see the streets and the roads green, yellow, and so on. So technology is there, and of course there are means to prevent the intrusion on privacy and so on. The other thing, of course, is this is a very fragmented market, dealing with a huge number of stakeholders if you think of all the sectors and all the entities working here. And again, this means that there is a huge variety of systems. Interoperability is definitely one of the key issues. Again, all these things are, on the one hand, challenges, on the other, they are barriers that need somehow to be overcome. The numbers I have is that 80% of the European population lives in a city being something with more than 10,000 people. So it's really a lot of people, with all the infrastructures that we need in the city. And, you know, this challenge that was put forward by Neelie Kroes, the Commissioner for the Digital Agenda, that they are investing, they meaning the European Commission, are investing a lot of money in this area. So which means also that there are a lot of opportunities there for us. Okay, so how to put this into work, how to bring this really into reality? We need to take then into consideration not only the technological aspect, as I said, but also the governance one, so involving the local authorities and so on. The usage, which means people. Business innovation, so the companies and all the business infrastructure that are dealing with these. The socioeconomics and the policies, of course, and all these. These were found to be in somehow the 5 pillars that we need to bring when we are discussing the smart cities. To address now the 3 specific sectors that we highlight and we consider really the key ones to start moving in this direction and to put things into work. One is this of health inclusion and assisted living. The 4 key areas that we identified are those that you can see here. So wireless diagnostic and disease management. So basically this means having people, direct link with people, and not necessarily having people in hospitals, but having their people at home, taking care of their at home, people that are not healthy, so people with diseases. This is not assisted living, it's a different thing. And bringing all the technologies for these. This is definitely one. There's a lot of opportunity, there are a lot of opportunities here, and for sure that the sector and hospitals in particular will see here a good way to save money, as it is also hospital consultation and emergency scenarios. So this is now, it's a different thing. If, of course, if you have an emergency scenario, you need to bring all the technologies for the location or locations where these are going to happen, but also to bring this remote capability of consultation to people. Assistive technologies, so now getting in the old guys, let's put it this way, and again, creating the conditions for these people to live at home and using the technology so that even the people that are not skilled from the technological viewpoint can still be at home instead of a foster home residence, whatever, and having access to technologies. There is this idea that you can use the TV, that is an interface that the elderly are used to, of course, just to see images, but then you can use these to communicate to a lot of things. So it's basically, it's this ITV that everyone talks about, but really bringing it to the elderly and using for a lot of applications. And then well-being and personalization, that's basically what everyone wants from a broader viewpoint. So what if we take these, applications, there are really a lot of requirements and constraints that we need to bring to ICT and to telecommunications in particular. There's a wide range in the volume of data. We are talking here about things that can be transmitting continuously if you are monitoring a patient for the heartbeat, for example. Not too much data, but still needs to be transmitted. Two things that is just an alarm. So just want to send a couple of bytes if something happens. Then in some applications, it's continuous measurement. You really need to deliver these data in a continuous way, which means that it's a streaming kind of application with, of course, all the problems that you have in this kind of transmission. In some cases, you need error-free data. If you are sending an X-ray, the medical doctor, the MD, definitely needs to have a very good quality thing, or else you'll be finding tumors where they don't exist, or is missing tumors where they exist, whatever. So really good quality, and we need to cope with this, of course, with high quality, high definition stuff in this example. Delivery of alarms in some of these applications, for example, for assisted living, but for many other things. There is, I was told of a company in Portugal that wanted to launch a system for assisted living, is that people, if they fell down or whatever, then there was an alarm that was triggered. And their idea was to have a cheap thing, blah, blah, blah. Say they wanted to use SMS to send the alarm, which in principle sends a nice idea. I mean, it's cheap, SMS is there. There's only one problem. Hopefully, this person will not have a problem in Christmas Eve, right? Or at the end of the year, because as you know, many times the SMS reaches us the following day. So these are things that really, so let's say the quality of service in the sense of how you transmit information and all that, this really needs to be brought and needs to be looked at when you are looking at these applications. Personalized devices, all these things that you need to get. The second one was ITS, Intelligent Transportation Systems. So the first one is urban and road traffic management. So here is, let's say, from the infrastructure viewpoint, or from the entities that run public transportation and all these kind of things, traffic lights and so on and so forth. So really having a real-time management of the flow of the traffic in a city. And this is one of the major problems, as you know, in many cities. The second one is efficient trip management, which of course, the technology also already there, which is, let's say, for the user in the car or something like that. So knowing where the problems are, and if there is a major problem, a traffic jam in one street diverting to the other, these things start being there. We just need to really to bring them into a larger scale and to integrate them. This is the key issue and the next step for the smart cities. Then the communication services, not only in vehicle to vehicle, but also vehicle to infrastructure. And in here, of course, it's not just the usability of the previous things, but also a lot to do with entertainment, for example. And this, of course, brings to the very last application, which is mobile prosumers. I'm sure you heard about the prosumers. It's just putting producers and consumers in the same person, which everyone is becoming today, especially the youngsters, when they upload a lot of stuff in the Facebook and all these social networks. And of course, this will going to happen in cars, in public transportation, and all that. So we do need to have all these running. What are the challenges here? The scalability of solutions. So really the millions of stuff we need to put addresses on. The heterogeneity of devices, again, there is no standardization in many of the things, so you cannot hope that everything is standard. The availability of accurate location information, we are reaching pretty quite good accuracy on these with a couple of meters, which is good for most of the applications. Still, for some things, we need something better still. And of course, in some cases, real-time exchange of data, which means that this can create problems if you just use a cellular network on a normal basis, because in some cases, if you have a lot of people in a cell doing something, then just the system will not work. So this needs to be taken care and considered. The other one is environment, energy, and efficiency, and probably you heard a lot of these yesterday. So of course, it's the integration into infrastructures, the smart grids, smart processes, smart devices. So everything that has to do with environment on the one hand and the usage of energy in an efficient way in the other, with all the things that you heard most probably. The challenges here are reliable real-time communications. Again, this is always a major issue in some of the applications. The existence of standards or non-existence of standards and how to deal with these, and how to adapt to some of the standards that exist in some of the areas of energy. Specific sensor and actuator networks. Sensor networks here, as for example, of course, I didn't mention it, but the sensor networks are playing a key role in everything that has to do with health and assisted living. And in here, of course, different sensors, different actuators, but still they will play a major role. And of course, redundant communication channels here for some of the applications in energy, in the energy area. You really need a very good quality of transmission. So creating redundancy so that the network, the energy network, does not collapse, it's a key issue that needs to be taken care of. So coming back then, let's say, to the ICT area, then this means that regulation and standardization really needs to be looked at. As you know, in Europe and the US, we usually don't take the same approach in these, and this may create some problems if you are looking at a global solution, if you want to call it this way. Still, we need to identify which bodies needs to be addressed, because really we are bridging the ICT with all the other sectors: health, transportation, energy, and so on and so forth. And I'm not sure if there is a 3GPP for health, or an ETSI for transportation, or whatever, right? An ITU for assisted living, whatever, you name it. So finding the right entities, the right bodies to interact to and to bring the policies for these solutions may not be or is not an easy task. Then, of course, just by itself, interacting with the other sectors is a challenge by itself. For those of us that have already tried to interact, even the engineers in other areas, I'm not going beyond engineering, but just talking with mechanical engineers or civil engineering sometimes is already a challenge. Not about football, we're talking about technology. So now imagine you want to discuss with a medical doctor or a manager or people with other backgrounds working in a different sector that you want to discuss some of the things and some of the problems that are identified. It may not be very easy to do it. It can be done, obviously, but we need to be aware that let's say, this problem exists. And also need to be aware that there may be some ethical barriers on these. We are not used to have ethical barriers apart from the privacy stuff in telecoms, but there are ethical barriers in many other areas, and we need definitely to be aware of these. Of course, the other problems is the security of information these days, with all this fuss about the US National Security Agency and so on and so forth. Still, we cannot forget about this. This is there. We need to take into consideration. We need to take it into account for obvious reasons, I would say. And then there is another thing, which is, again, coming back to these other sectors. Okay, these days, at least in Portugal, I'm sure the numbers are different. But let's say up to 2 years ago, I think people change mobile phone every 1.5 years. They change the car every 5 years. And probably you change flat every 50 years, whatever. I don't know. Something like that. But what this means is that the cycles are completely different in each of the sectors. And the things that we are used to have and to bring in our world of mobile and internet and so on, these cycles are totally different in other sectors, which means that it's not easy to put up the speed we are used to, let's put it this way, in our sector to these other sectors, like the banks, distribution, and so on and so forth. So again, this, I would say it's again a barrier and a challenge for the implementation of smart cities. So in conclusion, I think that this area of the internet of the future and the networks of the future is really a new world that can be brought to the area of the smart cities. There are, some of the problems are, let's say, just in integration of technologies, and no new challenges are there. In the others, there are really new challenges to be taken, to be addressed for research and development in this area. And definitely smart cities are an excellent opportunity for integration of technologies, and hopefully we'll manage to live in one of these cities before we go, yeah? Okay, thank you very much then, thank you.